Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
thank you. We are actually back into the Parsha of the week. In fact, I think it's going to take us a while to get through this particular Parsha. This is the very last Parsha in the book of Genesis, and for me, it's a bittersweet moment because we're bidding farewell to these amazing sagas in Genesis. And here we are reading, there's poetry involved. We're in the midst of Jacob's blessings to his sons. And at this point, he's in the midst of a blessing to Judah, and it's quite extensive. And this turns out to be in some ways more of a prophecy. Comments have been made about the fact that although it's called his blessings, some of them don't sound like blessings. And okay, let's go on to this. Right, so we're right here in the midst of Judah. Lo Yasur Shevet Mihuda. The scepter will never depart from Judah. Umechokek mi bein raglav, and the ruler's staff from between his legs, assuming that has something to do with strength and power, right? Aj ki yavo Shiloh, until Shiloh comes. Velo yikhat amim, and to him nations will be subservient. Excuse me. And you can see this is poetry. It's very arcane material, and that's why there's lots of Rashi on it in terms of how the tradition tries to interpret this for us and make sense of it. Now, this word yikha, I actually had to turn to the Targum to actually translate it. I tried to find the root of it, and this dot here in the kuf would appear to make this a nun, that it's an elided nun. This is the way in which what are called pei nun verbs are conjugated, and that would be nun kuf hey, one might assume, but I really found nothing that was really helpful in terms of looking up that particular root. So Rashi comments on it a little bit too. It's an unusual verb. And possibly if I used Rashi's interpretation and explanation of the grammar of that, it might have helped me look it up, and I'll still need to check that. So, Lo Yasur Shevet Mihuda, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Mi David ve'elech, right? And this is talking about the scepter, of course, was when David became king over Israel. And so this is from this point on, we know that any subsequent king, any subsequent monarch is going to be from the tribe of Judah. Once that was established, so this is a prophecy. Elu Rashi Galuyot, and this includes the heads of the exilarchs. I'm going to ask you to just check, make sure you're muted. Otherwise, I can do it for you if you like. Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Thank you. This is referring to, even though the kingdom had been destroyed by Babylonia, it had been conquered by Babylonia, in the Babylonian exile, in Babylonia itself, there was the head of the community who was a descendant of King David, and he was known as the exilarch, and this is what he's referring to. Shebebavel, that were in Babylonia, Sherodim, who rule et Ha'am, the people, Beshevet, with the scepter, or Shememunim, because they were appointed al pi hamalchut, because the ruling power of Babylonia appointed them and gave them that authority. So it's interesting that the way Rashi is interpreting, and we know that Rashi essentially, his responsibility is to take the tradition and try and put it in language that we can understand, that when it says it shall not depart, the implication is that we might think it would depart, and that's why Jacob is coming to reassure that despite the fact that there will no longer be a kingdom of Judah anymore, there still will be that exarch, that appointed ruler over the people. Umechokek mi ben raglav. So a mechokek means one who is an arbiter. Chok, of course, we know is a law, right? Mi ben raglav, one might say that's progeny. That's a reference to future descendants. And he says talmidim, that's a reference to pupils. Elu Nisiei Eretz Israel. That is referring to the heads of the community in Israel, such because the religious community had a head to it, a Nasi. We talk about Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who edited the Mishnah, and that was saying there would be such heads. Ad ki yavo Shiloh. So what do we mean by Shiloh? That is a difficult piece to understand until Shiloh arrives. So he says that's a reference to Melech HaMashiach. That is actually a reference to the Messiah, Shehamlucha Shelo, because the sovereignty is his. V'chein tirgem Onkelos, and so did Onkelos translate, right? And here we are, Ad deyete Meshicha, right? He says, until the Messiah arrives, the delay he malchuta, because the sovereignty belongs to him. So that whole piece is what was explained by that Rashi says. He basically is translating the Onkelos for us. Umidrash agada, right? And there are also midrashim on this word Shiloh. Shiloh, Shiloh. So Shai is a gift to him, Shne'emar, as it says in Psalm 76, Yovilu Shai Lamora. They will bring gifts to the one who is to be feared. Velo Yikat Amim, right? So again, this Yikat Amim, Asifat, he says it's a gathering, Amim, of the people. Shehayud, he says that the letter Yud of Yikhat is Ikar. It's part of the root of the letter, or it's an essential part of that word. He biyesod, so it says, Ikar, so the way I should read this phrase is Shehayud Ikar he biyesod, because the Yud is not simply a letter that one uses in conjugations, but it is an essential part of the root of the letter. And he gives other examples, yeah, Yif'atcha, or Yif'at, yeah, your brightness. Ufa'amim shenofelet mimenu, but there are times when the Yud falls away from it. The kama otiyot mishtamshot belashon zeh. And there are several letters, he says, that have this, that operate in this when one is using this form of speech. Vehem nikraim, and these letters are called ikar nofel. They're called a root that disappears, right? That falls away. And he gives examples. Gon nun. So we know that the nun is often elided if it's in the first position of the root. So the nun shall nogef, right? Because it would be yigaf, and the nun would disappear. Veshel noshech, to bite, right? The aleph, and also the aleph, the letter aleph. So he says in examples of Job chapter 13, Sheba achoti. Okay, so apparently Sheba achoti is my declaration. Be'oznechem, in your ears. That's the verse. Yecheskel kaf aleph, Ezekiel chapter 21. Uve'avcha, right? It looks like Ushev avcha cherev, avchat, excuse me, Ushev avchat cherev, at the point, and there's the aleph in that position of the sword. Vahu lashon cherev, and it is this word uva avchat has to do. It's referring to a sword. Upiresh a mat hacherev. He says it is the fear, fearful part of the sword, or the fear of the sword. Vahu lashon zayan, and it is to do with arms. It has the meaning of arms, and in the second book of Kings, chapter 4, va'asuch shemen, right? And this aleph here, which refers to a pot of oil, and just that these kinds of letters fall away at times. Af ze yikhat amim. So he says here too, this term yikhat amim, so it's from the root yaka, to assemble, to people assemble, asifat, and that's a more common word, the gathering of people, shene'emar, as it states in Isaiah 11, elav yugoyim yidroshu, to him nations will seek or inquire, or something like that. Vedomelo, and a similar phrase in Proverbs 30, ayin til ag la'av. So it looks like the eye will mock the father, v'tavuz likhatam, and there it is, right? And so, or aim here, and it says, and despise the gathering of the mother, right? And he says that what it is lekibutz tamim shebapaneha, referring to the gathering of the wrinkles in her face, or on her face. So likhat haim is a fancy way, or a metaphoric way of referring to his aged mother. Mipnei ziknata, on account of her age, her advanced age. Uva Gemara, and in the Gemara, de yatvi umakhu akahata. Okay, so in the Gemara it says they sat and gathered to the assemblies, b'shvakei de Nahardea, in the marketplaces of Nahardea. So this word umakhu, right? Umakhu is from this root that means to assemble. And he says, actually, it says Nahardea, but it probably should say the Pumpadita. These were two cities where there were major Talmudic academies. The Masechet Yevamot, in the tractate Yevamot on page 110. V'yachol haya lomar kehiyat amim. Could have used a noun form of that, right? It could have said the gatherings of people. So we went into, Rashi goes obviously into quite a bit of detail over this word. That's a very arcane word in these passages, and unfortunately, that is typical of poetic Hebrew, of poetic language. It's highly literary. Going on. Osri lagefen iro, right? His foal is tied to the vine. And let's go on. Right. We read it, even though it looks like ira, it's read as iro, is this note here. Velasreka beni atono. And to the translation of the word sreka, it's like talking about the strands of the vine, I believe, right? Or it's a choice vine, can be translated that way. These, again, all difficult words. This literally, it means the offspring of his donkey. Kibes, and again, what this is going to mean, again, speaking very poetically. Kibes bayayin, he is washed in wine. Levusho, his garment. Uvedam anavim suto. Notice the parallelism, right? And in the blood of grapes, his robe, Rashi has plenty of work to do, right? So, Asiri, let's make sure I'm reading this correctly. Osri, forgive me. Osri lagefen iro. So, Nitnabe, he prophesied, Jacob prophesied, al Eretz Yehuda, over the land of Judah, Shetehe moshechet yayin kema'ayan, right? And that it would flow with wine like a well. Ish Yehuda Yesor Lagefen Ir Echad, a man of Judah could tie one foal to the vine, V'yitenu migefen achad, and he would, or maybe it means load, okay, something like that, and it would carry from one vine, umisorek echad, and one from one vine branch, ben atun echad, one again, one donkey. So I have a feeling it's got to do with the amount of grapes that would flow from that grapevine. Sreka Zmora. He says it's a shoot, aruka. It's a long shoot, and courir, something like that, in Old French. He simply translates it into his contemporary language. Kibes bayayin, right? He washes in wine. Kol ze lashon ribui. This all has to express the abundance of wine that will be produced. Yeah, ribui yayin, the huge amounts of wine. Suto lashon min beged. It's a reference to a certain type of garment. Hu lashon min beged hu is the way I should read it. Ve'en lo dimyon b'mikra, and he says that it is hapex legomenon. In other words, it's the only time you find this word in Scripture. Asiri kamo oser. So he says that this is a poetic form of oser, and I believe it means to hitch up or something like that. Dugmato. The examples of this added yud here. It's like a poetic expression here, and other examples are some of us may be familiar with this in Psalm 113. Mekimi me'afal dal. Right, there's that Mekimi who raises up the poor from the dust heap, and it could be Mekim, but this poetic form with the yud at the end. And then Psalm 123, Hayoshivi Bashamayim, right? Instead of Hayoshev Bashamayim, the one who dwells in the heavens. V'chein b'nei atono ke'inyan zeh. So the yud at the end of the b'nei atono is a similar kind of expression in the Hebrew. It's poetic. For Onkelos Tirgem b'melech HaMashiach. And Onkelos interprets it, he translates it as a reference to King Messiah. Geffen and the vine, Hem Yisrael. That's a metaphor for the Jewish people, for Israel. Iro Zel Yerushalayim. That refers to Jerusalem. Sorka Elu Yisrael. So he says this vine shoot, this is the Jewish people. And he gives an example from the second chapter of Jeremiah, where it says, V'anochi netaticha sorek, and I planted you as a choice vine, which is exactly the context there indicates that, and that's why they translated that word sreka, I think it was, right? Let me make sure. Again, short-term memory, yeah, sreka as a choice vine. Find it, okay. V'anochi netaticha sorek, right? I planted you as a choice vine. B'nei atono. This is, let's see. Yes, this is, so he sees it as to build, right? The word livnot means to build. Atono, his donkey. Yivnun hechle. That's the translation. In the Onkelos, he translates, will build his sanctuary. Lashon sha'ar ha'itun. There we go. So there's the word and the connection to that with the word sanctuary, the idea of it being sanctuary, right? It is this has the meaning of the entrance gate, B'Sefer Yechezkel in the book of Ezekiel. And I guess this is chapter 40. The od targumot fanim acherim, and there are also interpretations in other ways, giving it other meaning. Geffen ele tzadikim, so the idea of a vine, these are righteous people. Bnei atono, right again, the foal, something like that. Of de oraita, those who serve the scripture, who practice the Torah, but ulfan, or who labor in the Torah, in schools, al shem rochve atonot schorot, and it's the same, and it's used also, excuse me one sec. Okay, he says this is used another expression that also makes a reference to donkeys, right? Those who ride white donkeys. Kives bayayin, right? Who washes in wine. Yehe irgun tav levushohu tzivu. It looks like it's tzivu. I can't. If there's a letter missing here, I'm having a hard time reading it. Okay. So I think this is argavan, right? So in other words, purple. And this looks, the argavan tav would be good, good purple, fine purple. Levushohi, his garments that are dyed, right? And dome layayin, it looks like wine, but v'tzivonin, and colored garments, hu lashon suto, right? That's the idea of suto. Shetahe levushatan, that their garments should be, sorry. Shehaisha, so it's Lashon Sota. He says that using this kind of language has a reference to the Sota. Remember the woman who's suspected of adultery, although here it's put in a positive sense, in that Sha'isha lo vashtan, that a woman wears such garments, or mesita bahem et hazachar, and she's able to entice the man in that way, litain einav ba, so as that he looks at her, he pays attention to her, these scarlet garments. V'af rabotenu pirshu b'gemara, and our rabbis, our sages, explained in the Gemara, lashon hasatat shikarut. It has to do with the allurement of intoxication, the Masechet Ketuvot, right? In other words, I think the idea here, when one is intoxicated, is that the idea of these people, I believe, being so devoted to Torah, that they're in a way intoxicated with the Torah. In the tractate Ketuvot, and he gives you the page number, page 111, for al hayayin, right? And it says, and regarding the wine, Shema Tomar Eino Marveh, lest you think it won't intoxicate me, right? It won't intoxicate. Talmud Lomar Sota, scripture calls it Sota, referring to the Sota, to allure, right? Something that is alluring. And I think we're going to stop here for today. And I'll mark the place. And I'm going to stop the share. Any comments? Any thoughts? I mean, this is pretty arcane stuff. Yeah, Harlan?
I was surprised to hear a different word for purple other than argamam.
Yes, yes. It could be the Aramaic form of it, although I'm not familiar with mems and vavs, sort of being related from Hebrew to to Aramaic. Ma and va. If you think about it, both a ma and a va are somewhat labials. They're both labial letters, so it's quite possible. I know Harlan's trying to unmute. I'll give it another shot. Oh, you unmuted. Good for you. Okay, Harlan.
All right, Jacob. Where did Jacob give the blessings to? Did he give the blessings to Solomon's children, or did he give the blessings to Reuben, who was the firstborn? I don't understand it.
Okay.
And then
Let me answer that question, and then if you have another question, I'll take it, okay? So
yeah.
first of all, they're gathered around his deathbed. He's ready. He realizes his end is coming, and he wants his last words to be a prophecy and a blessing to his sons. So Jacob's sons are gathered around him, and he's offering them these words. That's the picture. Okay?
Oh,
All right. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where we are right now in terms of the time snatch. Okay.
well, why does it take so much time for the tribe of Judah? What about the other tribe?
Okay, so this isn't the first one. He starts off with Reuben, okay? And you're going to see that he's going to spend a lot of time with Judah and with Joseph because they were preeminent tribes. Right? King David was going to descend from the tribe of Judah, and the northern kingdom was going to be ruled essentially by the tribe of Ephraim, which was, of course, one of Joseph's sons. So there are two tribes of the 12 that are preeminent, and they are Judah and Joseph. And in fact, Jacob is going to spend quite a bit of time talking about them, and that's why.
Well, why did they split the two tribes? They finally came together, but why did they split in the first place?
Well, they did because that's a whole story that after Solomon's son Rehoboam ascended the throne, and he was told by his wise men to tell people that he would govern them in a compassionate kind of way. And then he also had some young advisors who said, you should tell them, my father ruled you with whatever rods, I'm going to rule you with scorpions. In other words, saying he was going to be the tough guy. And he decided to follow the advice of his inexperienced advisors. And 10 of the tribes said, who needs this? And they split away. And they had another, Jeroboam was the king who became king of the 10 northern tribes. So,
okay. Yeah.
that's in brief what happened. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good. I'm going to stop the recording at this point. Thanks, Harlan.